full depth into the principle of Bina versus chochmah, all to show that even though in Bina is also seichel, and it still retains the oir of chochmah, which, by the way, not parenthetically, because we have repeated it many times, but it's important always to remind ourselves, because we very easily lose track of this. Bina and chochmah go together. Bina is not, in our very depraved, very skeletal world, Bina can very easily interpret as encountered knowledge. Knowledge that you know by touch, not by seichel. Yes, Baruch. Amen. Yep. Oh, 770. Point. Well,
And I'm like the bar over there. I'm like, smells like coffee to me.
okay.
So when you say encounter, I'm just curious, is it incorrect even to say that Bina is encountering it the way that it's in chochmah? Are you being shayla that approach as well? Or just the worldly view that Bina means encountering knowledge in a tangible way, something that comes from outside?
The principle, when I say encountered, is the pure world view. I know that this exists because I encountered it. There is absolutely no basis for its existence. It has no deeper presence than the fact that I encountered it. Like, I mean, this is examples I don't need to give you. I mean, this is the world we all come from.
My experience with it is a substantiation of its existence.
No, not substantiation of its existence. It's the source of its existence. This is what it means that it exists. Substantiation, okay, they can go all kinds of different levels, and deeper and deeper and deeper. Yeah, substantiation exists, but what does existence mean in itself? That you can go all the way to motivation. But the principle of encounter, this is where they came up with this crazy thing that the world will evolve from a big bang. Because that is all that I encounter. The encounter is what makes it. It tells me that it exists, not and not substantiation, but this is the reason that it exists. Let's take it on a lower level. What is the meaning of ownership? We talked about the last few days.
On the worldly level?
Yeah.
Possession.
I'm sorry, what is the question you're discussing here?
Okay. Did you miss when I said about Bina?
Yes, I'm sorry, I missed that. I didn't get in yet.
Okay. We're going back now in the mind. We're coming back to, so to speak, the initial point that the Rebbe was explaining in the first page and a half. That the beginning of Hishtalshelus is from Bina, and he pointed out Bina has the source, has identifying midos and so forth. So I explained that we must always bear in mind that when we say Bina in Chassidus, we mean Bina that is closely associated with chochmah. Bina is an extremely fine sense. It is not a personal experience. It's not based on my personal verification. It's based on the truth that I see, but it's a truth that I see that has been shown to me by chochmah. But the reason I can accept it as true is because it is true, not because I've experienced it. In the world, the definition of possession, as we said many times, it is consent. You and I will agree that which in your hand is yours, that which is in my hand and is mine. Why do we agree? So that we each can have our thing without concern that the other one is going to take it away. When we say by encounter, we mean exactly the form of knowledge that the dog knows that there's a stick there. This is where the whole mental process comes from. You know, we're all monkeys. And our perception, our knowledge of the truth is not any deeper than that of the monkey. It may be more elaborate, but as far as depth is concerned, we're exactly on the same level. And we clearly rejected 100%. When we talk about Bina and we start identifying midos, leanings and so forth, you have to understand that Bina, yes, Bina has a mitchilah, but this mitchilah, the reason that Bina can relate to mitchilah is because it senses the oil chochmah in it. And what's oil chochmah? What does chochmah perceive? Chochmah perceives the godly truth. I said, "Einoid milvade, the motzerishim." Because chochmah is a direct revelation of the emunah, of the principle of the emunah, and therefore it's a godly reality. And this is what Bina is accepting. This is why Bina is accepting it. Okay, this is always coming up and always pointing this out. Okay, so we are going to be on the very end of the line that begins mitchilah. This is the phenomenal thing that Rebbe is pointing out in chochmah. Perhaps we don't all realize the phenomenon of it. That chochmah has nothing definitive in it, nothing concrete that say, okay, this is it and that cannot change. If there is nothing definitive in it, so what is there? Is it real or is it not real? And this is the principle of chochmah. It is absolutely real. Not only is it real, it's very real. It's a reality of motzi rishon mamtze kol nimtza. Amit is himotzi nimtze kol nimtza. And thus this knowledge, this reality is not at all measured by how much I can identify in it. What kind of mitchilah is it? I can walk right through it without being affected, without sensing that I'm walking through it, and that is really the reality. This is, you would say in English, the kunz of chochmah. This is the depth of perception that chochmah has. This is exactly coming back to the practical level. And the Rambam says, you have to know that there is a first being, Mamtze Kol Nimtza. What forces you to know this Motzi Rishon? Is there anything that forces you to know this? Have you ever encountered it? Have you proof of it? No. I know it because I know it.
What's the meaning? I know it. What can we say about this? I know it because I know it.
Oh, what's the problem? I know it because I know it. The answer is, I know it with my neshama. My goof, I don't care. I'm not asking my goof to consent or deny. I'm not asking confirmation from my goof. My neshama is the reality, is my reality. My neshama is what tells me that there is a reality. And this is the source of my knowledge. And if I encounter anything and I can touch it, my first question is, where is this reality in this element? There has to be a godly element in this. Because otherwise it wouldn't be. In our mishalim, this would mean, just to give us a little handle on this and how we approach it in terms of avodah. In our mishalim, this would be that, like Avraham Avinu saw a bira, and he says, there cannot be a bira without a balabais. But you see the bira? No, cannot be. There has to be balabais. This is the neshama intelligence. There has to be truth behind it. This is the pshat in the words, I know it because I know it. What means because I know it? Because I have a true life element in myself. Like I said many times, we all sense, it's a phenomenal thing, we all sense that life is eternal. We all sense that the goof is not eternal. The reality of our presence is our life, not our goof. Why are we in the goof? Because our life has a mission to perform through the goof. And ultimately reveal the truth of this life in the physical arena. To put on film, which makes a statement that the godly truth permeates and extends itself into the physical world. This is why we have a goof. Okay. All right, so I said again, okay. Hopefully, every time I hit this, it kind of irks me. I hope we get the point over here. Bina takes its reality from chochmah, not from encounter. Not because it has physical proof of it. That's insignificant. As I said many times in this and in the big talk, that's a cat also knows that. That's not intelligent, that's instinct. And we all understand the difference. Also on the level of knowledge. Instinct means that I instinctively know. It doesn't mean that it's true. I feel it, I experience it, therefore I know it. In other words, its existence is at that level, to the extent that I experience it, to that extent it exists. It doesn't really exist. It exists to the extent that I experience it. Intelligence is a completely different perspective. So that it exists in a real sense. Completely different relation, different insight, different reality. Okay, I start up again. All right, the line begins mitchilah, and it's a few lines above the middle of the page, nun vav. At the end of that line, Harei, the very end of Harei, thus we have shown in this discussion, the Yiker Haschol Ayishtalshelus Hu Me'abin, that the principal starting point of Hishtalshelus is from Bina. This whole discussion started from when we quoted from the Zohar, that there is Almo Eloh and Almo Tator, Malchus Eloh and Malchus Tator. And we said Malchus Tator is Malchus Eloh is from Bina. What has Bina to do with Malchus? Because in Bina there is already definite and presence of Midas. And that is the beginning of existence, of worldly existence. Although that we actually explained earlier, the chochmah bina hein ayin v'yesh, that chochmah and bina together, they both represent the ayin and the yesh. Therefore, and the line, we have to underline on the word the ikor, because we want the ikor. The chochmah bina are ayin and yesh. Ayin and yesh. Okay, let me just say the next half line and discuss it a little bit. Shezehu mokoir kol ha'hizhavus me'ayin leyesh, which is the source of all the hizhavus of the entire creation. Hizhavus means that it comes into existence. Shem me'ayin leyesh, hizhavus that comes me'ayin leyesh. So what's the point? In his havus, there's a phenomenal principle. On one hand, it is yesh. And therefore, what is the principle of Hisavus? The Yesh element. However, a Hisavus that only has the Yesh element, does not have the root of the Ayin, is not a real presence. This is what we were talking the whole time. What is it about? Yesh bal habayis lebiro zu. And there is a biro that fell together accidentally. If there's no bal habayis, it's not a real biro. The yesh is not a yesh unless there is an ayin that gives it support, that gives it meaning, gives it a basis. This is what we discussed all the time. The oretz is toilevetz al belimo. The belimo. This is gives the earth gives the oretz a substance. So this is what we explained earlier. Chochmah Bina. This is the Ayin v'yesh. For real Hisavus, you have to have both. You have to have the yesh and you have to have the Ayin. That gives us a sense of reality. To put it in simple human terms, we'll still discuss it, but just as we see we're getting a little bit lost over here. If it's Ayin, it's Ayin. Who needs Ayin? In simple human perspective, a real occurrence is only one that has been intended to occur. The intention level is the ayin of the occurrence. Then the occurrence, the yesh is real, because there is a real basis for its existence. There's the ayin that says, yes, it has to be.
You say it's the Ayin because it doesn't show up in the yeah, I can't see it in the
Yes, the ayin is, there are many levels in the ayin. When you say intent, that's already not the full-fledged ayin. This is the ayin the ayin of the yesh. That's the ayin that's already recognizable in the yesh. But why is there an intent to do it? Like I say all the time, people build a car they intended to build a car. When they have already identified the principle, yes, I need to go from point A to point B, it will be very helpful. So then that's the ayin at that point. But really, where does it begin? At a much, much higher and more subtle stage. In the chochmah stage. When there is no mitchilah at all, but the reality itself says you belong everywhere. As we said this morning, in the rotzen itself, the Hashem Tad rotzen is because superworldly. Rotzen is where you want to be. That force brings out chochmah at a completely different level. So the word ayin, there in Chassidus you will find sometime. I think it's going to come out. The ayin of the yesh. There is many different, but this is a categorical difference between saying the ayin of the yesh, which means the ayin that immediately precedes the yesh. That ayin that immediately precedes the yesh has already the intent of the yesh. But there is an ayin that precedes the yesh, but not immediately precedes the yesh. That is way before the ayin as ayin unto itself. Just the reality, the human reality itself. like we say, the man is in the gutter, and he has no perception at all that he is for real in this world. But we say no, but he is. That's Ayin, at a much higher level. To bring out that Ayin takes a lot of effort. To make the man aware in his intellect, yes, you're for real. This world is yours. So this is all the arena of Ayin. But then there's chochmah, Bina, there's the Ayin v'yesh. That means chochmah is the Ayin of the yesh. Chochmah is what begets Bina, that provides for Bina the Ayin. It's a direct connect. And therefore it's a direct connect. One would then tend to say that chochmah is part of the source of his house. He also mokir his house. He's saying Bina is no, chochmah is also mokir his house. Because Bina, chochmah directly provides for Bina. And we're making, this is what Rabbi is making this extension. No, Bina is the real mokir his house. And not chochmah. Chochmah is still in the level of, so to speak, of the absolute truth itself. Okay, let's continue. So here's that. If I don't chochmah bina is ayin v'yesh, shezeh hu moki kol ezavis miyayin v'yesh, hari hachom. Nevertheless, even though that's what we explained for, that is ayin v'yesh, nevertheless we have to remember hachochmah hi bevchinas ayin adayin. But chochmah is within the bechina of ayin, adayin. Adayin, as we already explained, we had the word adayin several times here, as yet. And this is the subtle element that the Rebbe wants that we should understand. On the one hand, the chochmah is the ayin of the Bina. And together they form the mocker of his house. And the chochmah itself is also influential, so to speak, in his house. It provides the ayin for his house. So it's influential. But you have to understand, but nevertheless, chochmah is b'bechinas ayin adayin. What's mean b'bechinas ayin adayin? I said it's ayin, it's ayin. B'bechinas ayin adayin means the following. In what direction, like we said before, let's step back a bit. We said, the real mitchilah is only if it is intended. When you have intention, it's no longer ayin, even though it is still not there in mitchilah, but it's already tending towards mitchilah. You have intent for this to be. So the principle of mitchilah has already been recognized at that level. So that's not a true ayin. That's not a true ayin. If in chochmah, think of it, if in chochmah, you will still learn the chochmah, but you already perceive what can come of it as a mitzias, then it's not ayin. This is called the ayin of the yesh. It's ayin, but not b'chinas ayin. It's ayin b'chinas yesh. One can say that like this. It's an ayin that's tending towards yesh. And at that point, here's a focused question. At that point, one can say, "What are you thinking about?" And you can answer, "I'm thinking about that which will come from this thought." That's a real yesh. When it is b'chinas ayin, you can't ask what are you thinking about. Nothing. I'm thinking about pure truth, pure reality. So this is an important point, as Rebbe said. Yes, chochmah Bina. Together they form the Moker his house. And chochmah is the Ayin, and the Bina is the Yesh. But at that level, chochmah and Bina, the chochmah is bivchinas Ayin, which means chochmah has no tendency towards Yesh. The tendency towards Yesh begins in Bina. Chochmah is not interested in the Yesh. Chochmah is interested in the Ayin element. But it's interested in the Ayin element as it can be perceived.
Can I ask a question about one thing you just said?
Yes, sure.
Just on the subject of intention. I thought that intention was higher even than chochmah. Are we talking about different levels of intention? Intention is the reality itself. This is what gives the reality element. You said that just now, right?
Yeah. You were referring to the term kavanah.
Kavanah, okay. And what is
the intent that we are talking about, I'm talking about over here now, is not kavanah. Kavanah means, okay, we have to use the same terminology. We have no choice but to have to use the same terminology. But we always have to realize what aspect we are referring to. Kavanah means not what I am doing, what I intend to do. What is the end result? Why do I intend it? That's what kavanah.
This is the kavanah that gives whatever, everything else reality.
You don't have cups? Hot cups?
Hello?
Yeah. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Did you hear what I just said?
Yes, but repeat it because I was interrupted.
This kavanah that you just mentioned, this is the kavanah that gives everything reality.
This is the kavanah, correct, but more correctly say, this is the kavanah where everything is tending to. Where that will first surface at the very end of the entire process. Right. Like for example, you go to work in order to make money. In your activity of work, I'm taking it very, very simply. In the activity of work, going to work and getting there and doing all the work, you don't have a presence of money. You're doing this work, whatever you're doing. The money that comes, it's almost a second, it's being created from nothing. All of a sudden you get money from this. You're teaching in university. Your teaching creates money? This doesn't create money.
That would be nice.
Right. It doesn't create money. You get money, that comes from a different source. That's the kavanah of the kavanah of your teaching actually is to have your students learn what you want to teach them. But there is a personal kavanah. Why are you involved in this? You're not doing it to shame university. You're doing it because you're going to get this reward. But it's unrelated to the work you're doing. That's what kavanah. So that is the word kavanah, also which is translated in English intent. But this is what's called a distant intent, an indirect intent. But I'm talking about what the intent for doing something means, a direct intent. Okay? I'm walking. Am I walking because my feet are carrying me? No, I intend to walk. That's a direct intent.
And you're situating that where in relation to chochmah and Bina.
Right.
So that was a question.
Right. Chochmah provides so to speak, the intent element for the Bina. The Ayin. Yes, I'm developing this Bina because there is a reality behind it which is in chochmah. So chochmah provides this intent. However, the Rebbe says, we still have even, so this is Ayin v'yesh. So chochmah is like the Ayin of the yesh of Bina. But still, we have to focus in and understand the difference. Chochmah is bivchinas Ayin. What does bivchinas Ayin mean? How is it different than what we said before? It's Ayin v'yesh. Ayin v'yesh could be that you can identify the yesh within the Ayin. Like I said, there's the intent. But chochmah is not totally identifiable from the perspective of the yesh of Bina. The chochmah the chochmah itself is bivchinas Ayin, meaning it's not even interested in the yesh.
The Bina, how is it said there? The Bina does not fully sense the chochmah, doesn't get a real view of what the chochmah entails.
That's right.
But yet it takes some kind of direction or some kind of input.
Yes, chochmah gives life to the Bina and gives it the Ayin element, but chochmah itself, its intent, its tendency is towards the Ayin element, not towards the yesh element. Mm-hmm. We always give the following illustration. I'm sorry to disturb you, but I want you to miss this.
No, I don't want to miss it either. I don't want to miss it either.
Yeah, we always give this a following illustration. You observe a very simple thing. Chochmah Bina is like sight. You observe a panorama, an exquisite view, whatever, sunrise, sunset, generally revival of the world in spring, whatever, something makes a tremendous impression on you.
Okay, you're ready for having...
I'm sorry?
No, it's nothing, I'm sorry.
Okay, makes an impression on you. And that you experience with your sight. You actually see it. And then you want to relate what you saw. But you don't relate what you saw. You want to relate what impression it made on you. What you really saw. Impossible.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you said you want to relate as in relate it to someone else, or relate as in relate to it?
No, relate to somebody else, for example. Relate to it, you can do these bonus, you get into it. Also not fully, because it never translates totally in the Bina. But if you want to relate, I saw it. It's a physical thing. I saw it. Why can't I relate it, tell you what I saw?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's impossible. Why? But you just saw it, you pay attention to it. When I pay attention to it, I was looking towards its Ayin, not towards its yesh.
Mm-hmm. And
Not what there is, but what there isn't.
Right, and that can never be communicated. Can never
communicate.
be.
Can't communicate.
Can never
it's
be
intangible.
grasped. Yeah.
Isn't it because it's a?
I'm sorry.
Isn't it because it's a midah? It's a feeling, so you can't put it. You can't give that over.
No. This is not a midah. The midah comes later. You like it, you don't like it. This is an elevate. This is a seichel element. Sight is seichel.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What it isn't?
One second. I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. Sight is a seichel element. Let me explain. We see, the camera lahavdil sees, and the dog sees. There's an entirely three different principles of sight. The camera does not really see. The camera has, so to speak, the energy impression, like we said, the deflection of the light from the object. Nothing more. It's a touch. It's not even sight. The principle of sight, let me just explain it. The principle of sight is that you can relate to an object without coming in contact with it. That's the very basic definition of sight. The camera does come in contact with the object. The dog, the toy does not come with the object, but it comes in contact with its effect. What does the dog see? Not the object. It sees, is it something that's going to, that, like you said the other day, is it going to be my lunch or his, or am I going to be his lunch? Some kind of a midah definition of what he sees.
Mm.
So he doesn't see this thing itself. Only the human being, he's got real sight. If he's a bar seichel. Because in sight he sees really, without coming in contact with the object, the reason he sees it is because he recognizes it as a truth. Because only the human being conceptualizes truth per se, without him personally being involved. Not because it affects me. This is the principle that's based on nothing to do with me. The reality of existence. That's the basis of real sight. This is chochmah. In Seichel, this is the chochmah element. Chochmah is seeking out, like I said, seeking the Ayin element. The small tradition, the truth of it. The reason it sees it relates to this because it's true, not because, oh, but I say, oh, it's impressive.
How does chochmah even send?
Did I answer your question? Do you understand? So sight relates to seichel, to chochmah.
But we were saying before that the impression it has on him, what he's experiencing, that's a seichel experience.
No. That's a seichel experience, right? The impression is, what is the impression? He like we said many times recently, we see at a glance an entire panorama across tens of miles. How's it possible? And we see everything. The answer is, we're not looking at it from the angle of what is visible or what is measurable. We're looking at it from the angle of its truth, and the source of it. Because really, think about it, and I'll give you a little bit more of an insight. The reason that so many things can be here is because this provides a place for it. And why does it provide a place for it? Because that's the reality of the world. Should I go a little further? Let me go a step further. You come into this home, and there are so many different things over here. Right? So many different things. And each thing, so to speak, occupies a space, a spot. What is it that you're actually recognizing and seeing here? The spot that everything occupies? Or the home that provides for all of this?
I'm going to choose the second one.
Oh?
I think it was a rhetorical question.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to choose the second one, but I think it was a rhetorical question.
All questions are rhetorical. All questions reveal a certain point. Why is it a rhetorical question? They do occupy space. Why is it rhetorical?
Because you weren't really waiting for me to answer it?
Oh, you weren't going to answer? Yeah. yeah, there wasn't a question. It was a rhetorical question.
I jumped the gun. I answered it. I know.
Oh, that's fine. It's fine.
Okay, then I can stick with number 2.
You picked number 2. No, I'm glad you picked number 2, because if you didn't, I would have to stand on my head to change your mind. Yeah, of course you picked number 2. Because this is the human insight. That's what you are being differs from the dog, Lahavi.
So when you're in the house and you're looking around, you're actually seeing the actual experience of sight is not seeing the objects, it's seeing the home.
Seeing the home, what is it there? What does it represent? The balabayis lebirazu.
What would it look like if you were not seeing that? If you were seeing,
What?
if you, just trying to relate to it. Like, what would it look like if you were not seeing?
Cluttered.
If you were just
Ask
seeing.
the dog, he'll tell you clearly.
Seem very cluttered. And then you might want to think, like, why did he
It
put
would
this table
look
here?
a whole bunch of things unrelated to. This wouldn't look like a bookcase. It would look like a lot of books.
And this table would be in the wrong place because you couldn't run and catch bones over here. It's great.
What you see there is books organized,
Mm.
not books.
Mm.
Maybe we should invite a dog to give us a lesson. The truth is we don't need a dog, we need a scientist. Because he has the same mentality. Not Hashem, he has that mentality, but he has reduced his mentality to that, intentionally.
Dog is untrue. His perspective is untrue.
It's true at his level, but it's not the truth that we are. This is not, it doesn't have possess the godly element. Therefore it's not true. He's looking at the mitzias as it exists.
Mhm.
But that's not the reality. Reality is that there are no mitzias. Mitzias is being created. There's a motzerishing, there's a mamtikol nimtza. There's the Ayin that precedes the yesh.
What was the point that they can't give this over to someone else? What was the...
Well, the point is that, I mean, we're trying to explain chochmah. So we give the mashal from sight. Sight and chochmah are the same inyan, but on two different levels in ruchnis and gashmis. But sight is a very, very, very good illustration of it. You can't give it over. Why? Because you don't see it really.
Mm.
I mean, it's not a tangible. You see it, but you're relating to the intangible level. How can you give it over?
Kind of a miracle you see.
It's not really a sense like the other senses.
It's a miracle, exactly. Sight is a miracle.
And Chochmah tends to go off to Ayin.
And that's what
yet
chochmah.
you-
Chochmah is bebechinas ayin.
Uh-huh.
This is what it says. Yeah, bebechinas ayin adayin. Even though chochmah and Bina is yesh and ayin. It's yesh, is the ayin of the yesh. But chochmah is the bebechinas ayin. Listen to these words. Bebechinas ayin means it is in the realm of ayin. Which means it's not tending towards the yesh, it's tending towards the ayin.
Well, what do you mean you can't give it over? You can't relate it. Practically speaking, what do you mean by when you say? Because I would think
Relate
that
means you can't talk about it.
I would think that the same thing. could be
Anything
said
that
for-
occurs bisman mokom can be related, can be described.
Mhm.
Take a little longer, take a little shorter, but you'll be able to. Something that is not a presence definable by zman mokom cannot be related.
But so why is it a person who witnesses? Well, a person witnesses a panorama. So you say, "What did you see?" He tells you, "I saw this, I saw that. It was beautiful. It was big. It was bright."
You know what he will say to you? He will say to you one thing. So many things, but the view is unbelievable. That's what he'll say. You must go and see it. That's what he'll say. Why? Tell me what you saw. No, I can't tell you the view. I can tell you what I saw, but I can't tell you the view. You must go and see it.
I'm just a little confused because I thought the reason why you can't relate that which you're seeing has to do with the fact that reality itself transcends explanation. It's a real presence, and it's not. It doesn't lend itself to
Why?
be. Huh?
Why?
Oh, I never got that far. No, but my point is that by the same token, all experience of reality through any sense is equally transcendent. So we're limited in the same way of describing that which we hear. You hear a beautiful song, you say like, well, what was it? You say, you have to listen. I can't explain it to you. You taste a good food, and you say, how did it taste?
All of these things are true. All of this is true. Like we explained in the last few days, that the Ayin, the truth of the chochmah, goes along and permeates every less detail as it becomes more defined. Even when we go down to the practical level, and you say possession, ownership means that it's mine and not yours. That's a hasaga. Even there is an element of truth. Because you didn't have an element of truth, you wouldn't be. Yes, and therefore there is the element of chochmah everywhere. Because that is really the highest of everything. This is why we say, Shila says that in everything there is a spark, a tzitzis elokit. If you didn't have netz elokit, it would not be real.
So every experience that we have, we identify it as real because it's all rooted in the sense of chochmah that we have. That
ultimately, because chochmah goes there, right? Surely in midas it's a much more reduced and much more contained element, and we don't sense the chochmah, we sense the midah. And I mean, there's much. I don't want to deviate to the whole thing, but yes, there's ayin in everything. And the point that Rebbe is making here is that in chochmah, the ayin tends towards the ayin rather than towards the yesh. That's important. And therefore, that it says ayin adayin, ayin adayin, even though it is feeding into Bina.
That's good. So another question, I was trying to understand this. If you look at the sky, is your sense of the ayin more pronounced than if you look just like at the the buildings on the streets?
Yes.
Why is that?
It depends, from which angle you're looking, from which angle you're starting, but in principle it is. Due to the fact that there is not an interference.
Mm-hmm. The buildings are actually an interference.
What's an interference? In a building, you can tell yourself, I know what I see. I know why I see it. Here there's this, that. Over there, what am I seeing? And yet I see.
No, but you have that sense of wow, that's some, that's, and you
If
don't
you have
necessarily
this-
have that. Is that wow? Is that indicative of that you're seeing?
Generally speaking, the wow are the identifiable streaks within that infinite view.
So you don't.
But the identifiable streaks in that infinite view bring the infinity, face to face to you. Look, this sky can be represented in so many different ways, unbelievable. It's in infinite different forms and colors.
But that which precedes the wow, that's what we're calling. That's what we're calling the chochmah.
That is what that's the chochmah. It says in Tanya, we learned recently. Hu levadoi hu, ve'in zu losoi in hagor. hu levadu hu ve'in zu losoi, zu hi madregas hachachma. So if hu levadu hu ve'in zu losoi, what do you know?
This is Adar Yada.
What do you know? Can you count it? Like I said, you say Motzurishi, you found it. Did you ever stumble upon him? What is it that you know on Motzurishi? I know, I said, because I have that truth in my neshama. I know because I know. Because I know, because I was given that quality from him to know it. This is a super worldly knowledge. This is not an experiential knowledge. It's not a knowledge as a result of encounter. It's a knowledge of the neshama knowledge.
So this is not in the realm of your experience. This is in the realm of not what you experience, but what you're allowed to.
What you are. This is why I'm pointing out all the time. I know to what extent you guys were affected because you were born into it, you never sensed how drastically counter-human it is. To doubt, do I exist? What kind of should answer this? How are you going to answer that question?
Cautiously.
How are you going to answer that question? I'm going to convince myself that I existed because if I hit my hand on the table, it's going to hurt me. That's the definition of your existence. I exist because God told me I exist. That's why I exist. That question is so not mood, so out of kilter, it's not intelligent. Like I pointed out many times, Avraham Avinu never asked does the world exist. Avraham Avinu asked only one thing, of course the world exists. Where's the Balabais? Doesn't exist. Its existence is pointing that there is a Balabais, there is a reality behind it. Where is the Balabais? That's all he was asking. You have to remember one thing, we are now in the days of Amalek. Sophic is Amalek. I'm not sure whether I exist. That's clearly Amalek. There is no answer to that. And that's his trick. He can ask you a question, a very smart question, and put you against the wall and you won't find an answer. And not only is it not a smart question, it's a stupid question. It's a question coming from one who denies that I'm alive. But I am. But he wants you to be smarter than that. How do you know? Did you ever hear these discussions? How do you know? What makes you know? I was told. Who told you? God. I know.
You can't prove that.
They don't believe their own God. They don't.
I'm sorry?
The regular person on the street, he doesn't believe it. He knows he exists. He doesn't buy it.
Yeah, but then he goes to school and he becomes smart. You can tell him,
the ones that become smart are the problem.
yeah, and then tell him discard all of that, start all over again. And then by the time he's through, not through, within a month or two, he's a skeleton of a human being. But he's smart. Okay, so I stopped in this because the Rebbe said that chochmah is bibchinas ayin. And I want you to understand that expression. It's an extremely, so to speak, formed expression. Not bechinas ayin, bibchinas ayin. Bibchinas ayin means that's its tendency. Of course we know chochmah is ayin, bechinas ayin relative to Bina. But it's an ayin that feeds into the Bina. Bibchinas ayin means something else. Its tendency is in direction, is in ayin direction. And this is why chochmah brings, really is the link to godliness. Even though it feeds into Bina, into Yesh, but what does it feed into by Yesh? Bibchinas ayin, the source of the Yesh, the ayin itself.
Well, why when I'm in this room do I see why do I see the house? I see the shafa. Why? Because I'm a human being, and that's just how.
Because your whole perception as a human being, as I read, the whole perception of existence is not what I encounter and have to be proved, is the reality itself.
What does it mean?
That translates on a lower level, what does it mean? But in essence, what you see, how come you see anything? How come there's anything? Because there's reality. It's not even a question and answer. You start off with reality. Then you can start differentiating the chitzenis, the pnimis, and so forth, the makif. But essentially, what does a human being see? He sees reality. That's why I said sight allows you to know things without ever coming in contact, without the need to come way beyond that which you will find out by coming in contact with it.
You cannot know this from your experience. You have to be. This has to be something
that's given to you.
That is known from chochmah, basically. From known. You cannot say, oh, based on my experience, I.
Oh yeah.
No,
that's exactly.
You cannot.
Exactly. No, you cannot. It doesn't. Explain. As I said, if you have the question, you'll never have an answer. A question never eliminates an answer never eliminates a question. It's a question and an answer. And if it's a question and answer, do I exist or do I exist? So it remains, the question remains. And you're not really existent. Our real existence is beyond question. It's a motivation.
Why does it ever use here Lashon Ve'agam? It makes it seem like this is coming, to begin with, it presents some type of stira conflict to what we said previously. It just seems like it's one continuous statement. It doesn't seem at all. We say that mitchilah, talking about chochmah, that it doesn't have the presence of midas in it, so therefore it's totally, you can do with it what you want. And it says v'agam shenis v'le'el the chochmah Bina hein ayin v'yesh. How is it? What's the problem? So you're able to move to do whatever you want with it. Why? Because it's b'chinas ayin. It seems like it's one continuous statement. It doesn't seem v'agam.
You have to see the whole. So we said harei Bina, his is from Bina. V'hagam shenis boy le'yil da chochmah Bina is ayin v'yesh, which is both together mokil yizavus. Yizavus has both the yesh and the ayin.
Bina is the beginning of Ishtalshalus.
And this is the Mokel Hisavus. But we explained before that chochmah bina together as the Mokel Hishtalsus. This is like the Ayin Beis, and every yesh has to have the Ayin. That makes it into a yesh. That gives it a presence. Chochmah is the Ayin of the yesh.
Come on, but you can't say that the Ayin is the beginning of the Ishtalshalus.
Why not? Ayin together with the yesh, chochmah and bina.
The Ayin is the Mocker. But it's not the beginning of.
No, mocker means, bina is also the mocker. Mocker Hishtalsus. This is what he's saying. Hagam shenisbor yilda chochmah bina hem ayin v'yesh. Ayin v'yesh means the ayin v'yesh goes together, because a yesh without the ayin is not a yesh. Therefore, chochmah is also mokel his house. So yes, but harei chochmah he b'bchinas ayin adayin. But how did he modify what he just finished saying, that chochmah bina is ayin v'yesh? Ayin v'yesh means the ayin is tending towards a yesh. This is the yesh of within the ayin. But chochmah is b'chinas ayin. Is actually tending towards the ayin.
And therefore it's more correct to say that Bina is the Ischalas.
Therefore the Bina is defined as a Moker, not Chochmah. Of Ishtalsus.
The Adayin, that is, the Adayin qualifies the Ayin, and that explains how it connects to Bina.
Right.
So we had,
because ultimately it does go into Bina.
Because we had Adayin by and Bina has Ayin Bina Midas Adayin.
Adayin is what Adayin is very important in your discussion. I mean, you see the whole thing is so subtle, but if you want to get the message that Rebbe is trying to tell us, you have to get into it. Each line over here is a chapter. This is why it's taking us so long, because we learn a line and then we go and we start looking on the footnotes.
No, when you're bringing out the point of sight, we're not focusing on the experience of sight as much as just the fact that we see.
The
right?
reality behind it.
Why does a human being see? Is this like,
Yeah, what does it mean? Human sight, yeah, you can put it whichever way you want. Human sight versus the animal sight versus the camera sight.
Mm-hmm.
And we have our friends, the scientists say there's no difference. There's no difference. And you can't even argue the point.
Technically, they say that animals have better sight. There is a difference.
They say, but yeah, it's a human sight. Yeah, I'll tell you how human sight works. You see the same way as a camera, but you are so smart and you project in your imagination what you want to see.
This is good.
Huh?
This is true.
This is true, but we don't project. We are the opposite way. We see it l'chatchila mitzad mamayla, mitzad the chochmah.
Because there's a truth, that's why we see it.
That's why we see it, not
as
the other way
opposed to
around.
you see the mitzias and then you make something
And
of
then
it.
you make something up, exactly. You project. And
Not
then
making up. We already know the truth. And so we see this in the context of the truth that we know with our eyes closed.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. When Eden came to Har Sinai, think about this, we discuss it all the time. They came to Har Sinai, before anything they said, Naaseh v'nishma. What are they talking about? Naaseh v'nishma is way beyond saying, I'm your slave, tell me what to do and I'm here. Naaseh v'nishma is a completely different statement. Naaseh v'nishma is a statement saying, all there is your creation of the world, and I'm in the Naaseh realm, and I recognize that's all the creation, that's all the world is, that's all there is. All right.
And then Nishma is the way that reveals itself in the Metzias. That's the way the truth is where the truth reflects itself down below.
Right. The Nishma is to fulfill the ultimate kavanah, the ultimate purpose of the whole thing, of this Naaseh, so that it permeates the Metzias of the world itself.